different than usual. We're normally going over tips or tricks or different ideas or what have you. And tonight instead, we kind of decided to invite the new national president. As most of you know, we had elections in November at convention. Chris Hamp was elected national president. And John Benedict, who's on here, and I knew he would be, was elected national vice president. Fun fact, John has never held a national office before. Chris has held the most national offices out of any national president coming into her thing. She's held 5 now, right? So,
which I think is a way of saying that I can't hold a job.
It is, absolutely. We'll see if I can hold this one by the end of this conversation tonight. So I wanted to give her time to talk with you guys, since most of you are here with us each month. But I figured I would start it out by you guys getting to know her a little bit. And normally I would, yeah, absolutely. Sure, we'll add Phil as a co-host, I guess. Anyway, so I figured it would be just fun, a quick couple questions to get to know you. So, so in your previous life, besides a raspberry picker, from what I understand, what have you been?
What have I been? I have been a legislative aide and administrative assistant for a Washington state legislator. I have been, one of my most famous positions is a Senate intern. So I was an intern for U.S. Senator Dan Evans here in Washington, D.C. Back in 1988 for several months. And funny story with that, are we telling stories as we go?
Absolutely, let's do this.
So I applied to be a Senate intern and I was passed over. I was turned down. I was told no go.
Too short, right?
I don't know if they had a height requirement. I don't remember it, but 88 was a while ago. And then, and this was obviously before emails and all of that. So I wrote a letter and asked for assistance in what I could do better and how to better present myself and what I could do to have a better chance next time. And I got a call that said, come to DC, you're going to be a Senate intern. Well, by that time that happened, the Senate intern housing was full. So this was January of 1988. In the summer of 1987, I had met Leroy Watson. He had come out to our state Grange convention as the national rep and had gotten to know him. And I knew he lived in Washington, D.C. So I called Leroy and I said, help find me. I need housing for the next 4 months. And he said, come on back. You can sleep on my girlfriend's couch. So for 4 months, I slept on Sherry's couch and was a Senate intern. And the Senate intern phrase came from Leroy. If you are around when he first sees me somewhere, he will greet me as good morning, Senate intern. And that is because in 1988, when we were back here for that, the movie Good Morning Vietnam with Robin Williams came out. And so from there forward, I was good morning, Senate intern.
All right.
So let's see, what else have I done? I have been a employee of Washington State with the Washington State Emergency Management. I have been a deputy state fire marshal. I have been a firefighter and an EMT, and then retired as a chief officer in the fire service.
Earlier this year.
Yeah.
So it's true, she can't keep a job. She's got quite a rap sheet, right?
Yeah, it's been fun. Lots of different things, and I think everything has led to where I am today, right? I mean, it's all been part of this journey that if you want to take the challenge of making yourself better and learning something every day, then you can do that. And I think I like to think that I've tried to do that, and one thing leads to another, and you keep wanting to explore what's around, what's over that that next hill, or what's up the next rung on the ladder, or how does this work? How does that work? And that's been the fun part.
So, if you're just joining us, because I see we have one or two new faces, we're with new national president Christine Hamp. She is out of Washington State. Chris, like you mentioned, that you met Leroy when he was a state or a rep to your state session. Those reps are dangerous, man. They recruit you for things. They give you housing, all kinds of stuff, right? So it's like, yeah. But you've been a rep at a lot of state Grange sessions. How
I have.
many?
I'm looking on the screen here, and I met Eileen in October at their state convention. Dave Roberts from Connecticut's on. That was my second trip to Connecticut, actually. Love my New England folks. And I've been to Maine and New Hampshire, also in the New England Northeast region up there. Sister Ann had me out to Minnesota a couple of years ago. That was an absolute hoot. I loved her folks. That was a definition of, the small states always want to apologize for being small, and Montana does that to me. We go to Montana every year because we absolutely are in love with our Montana brothers and sisters, and because it's so darn fun. And I think when there's that smaller group, they rely on each other so much more to get it done, and they're all pulling in the same direction. And it's been my experience that those smaller states they're wired for success, because they've got to work together, and they've got to make sure that everybody's pulling in that same direction. And Minnesota was a super example of that. And let's see, who else do I see on there? I haven't been to Iowa.
Oh, it's a shame. I was actually really, really fun. And for, again, small state, I'll just tell you that it was really cool to look around the room and see like half of their officers, probably under 30 at that point. So that was kind of fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I know John's on. I haven't been to New Jersey.
I've been there as well.
Okay.
So
Well,
we're kind of like
we can like
scratching the list. Yeah.
tag team up.
John's great too. Yeah, he does a lot of outside the box things, which is his thing.
Good.
So, yep.
I see some Oregonians on there tonight. I have been to Oregon. I know you have been to Oregon as
twice.
well.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's my double dipper. You got Connecticut, I got that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's somebody sideways that I can't really tell who that is.
That's Dawn.
Dawn.
So yeah, you've been covered Connecticut.
Yep. Okay.
And let's see, Eileen, Idaho.
Oh, Idaho.
And Pennsylvania.
I've been to Idaho as another good neighbor, like Oregon is. Been to Idaho quite a bit. In fact, Idaho's convention is often closer than any of the ones in Washington, but just jump over the border a little bit. And Pennsylvania was, what did we say earlier? 2012 to Pennsylvania. So
that's when I realized that I would probably have to fall in line and walk behind you at some point,
Yep.
because you're charismatic, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that we talked about a couple of months ago on this program was, you don't have to have the innate characteristic of being charismatic. You can develop some of those skills. So if you guys haven't seen that episode, definitely go back on our YouTube and kind of watch that. I think you'll pick up some good tips from that.
you got to share the passion, and one of the things that I did in the fire service quite a bit was I had the opportunity to sit on oral boards as we hired new firefighters. So young folks, for the most part, that want to have fire service as a career. And as you're chatting with them about really the next 30, 35 years of their life, I mean, that's how long you're going to be a career firefighter. You want to see that passion. You don't want somebody just, this is what I want to do. You want that spark and that go get them, and not just how high, not just jump, but how high do you want me to jump? And that's what we can do with Grange. I mean, that's the piece of making sure that folks understand why we do what we do, why we Grange, and how important it is, and how fun it is. We talked about that. I think it was, and I kind of get mixed up in my state sessions this last year. I don't remember if it was Connecticut or California, although I did some of the same sorts of workshops and things. But we talked about that. We talked about that your elevator speech cannot be patterned after somebody else's. And you can't just start that off with, this dry history lesson about the Grange. You've got to read your audience, and you got to hit them with that elevator speech on why is this important to you? And if it's important to you, and you can explain that to them, then they're going to say, you know what, this is probably important to me as well. And that's that whole thing. But you got to have that passion and that excitement, and you've got to, every single time is somebody's first impression, right? And we've heard that since we were young, that you only get that one chance to make that first impression. And that's the piece. If there's any pro tips given out tonight, that's one of them, is making that first impression that absolutely, wows somebody, that it's more than what they expected, right? That their attendance at your event, at your meeting, their interaction with your members at whatever it is that you were doing is more than they expected. And then you set that hook.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I kind of didn't give you a script or an idea of what I wanted to talk about tonight. One, because I figured we could go off of each other a little bit, but two, because we can rehearse these type of things to death almost. And no matter how passionate you are about the subject, once you've done that, it doesn't feel as natural. And when it doesn't feel natural, it doesn't set the same standard. Right. It doesn't set the same picture. It feels too planned, I guess. And you can always tell that. So,
well, and I'll tell a story on myself. So working with Megan a little bit since National Convention.
So Megan, one of the communication fellows.
One of the fellows, yep. About, interacting with members, with our members and yet to be members in some sort of a visual way. And so she suggested doing these little, micro videos that would be, I think she said, chats with Chris or something. And it was like, all right. And so she's like, like the first one, introduce yourself, 2 to 3 minutes, introduce yourself. And then, introduce Dwayne, and introduce, talk about the Grange you grew up in, and talk about your job, and talk about your, where you live, and just these little snippets that people are going to say, she's real, and this
normal person. Yeah.
And then that we Grange like everybody else does. I always laugh when we travel around, and it's like, we put our pants on, put our sash on, just like everybody else does. But you talk about rehearsed. So I thought, let's practice one of these. Let's try one of these. So I get my camera, my phone out, and I put it on the tripod, and I turn it around so I can see me on the phone, like I can see me here in this. And I reach up and hit the record button, and I think I must have done it. If I did it twice, I did it 42 times. And it just came out stale and flat. And if I'm going to do these, I've got to have a little bit of an audience. I got to have somebody that you're able to talk with, that's the piece. But
so we're going to do this once a month is what you guess we're saying.
Well,
first 2 minutes with Chris every month.
Somebody's got to throw the video on so we can get some good cuts, but doing it by myself, that didn't work. And I made Dwayne leave because he was just staring at me. It was like, go get out.
Husbands are really good at that. They're wonderful, but my God, sometimes you want to pat them on the head and just be like, yep. Yeah, I understand.
That's what I said. I think there's something to do in town. Go.
I should break here and just say, by the way, if you have questions, if you want to ask Chris about her, favorite Grange memory or her favorite type of pie, put that in the chat now. I think the other part that I just want to take a moment to say is, I'm doing this with her tonight, right? But you guys all get to do this with people in your lives that you'll be able to have a moment where you're able to talk about Grange in this way. And it's super important, I think, that we're always ready for those conversations, but, because of the passion, but also not so ready, right? That it's stale. And finding times to do these. I mean, you could probably find a time to do this with, someone in a historical society who really wants to know a little bit about Grange. But you say, talk to me about my Grange first, what it's like to be in the Grange today. And then we can talk about how that relates to our past. So, our history has gotten us here. Things like that, I think, are a really important way to see what Grange is, how we've built. And that's what I think sells who we are. That sells our story, right? So as I'm waiting for one or two of you maybe to put something in the chat, although a couple of you know her pretty well, I want to pause for a minute. I want to talk about this thing that I've heard you do now a couple times. I've done over the last couple of years. I know Phil's done, which is you're using the word, granging or Grange. And I've been hashtagging why I Grange for a couple of years. And now, I've been listening to you and you're saying, well, this is how we Grange and we're Granging the same way you are. So talk to me about Grange as a verb for you.
Funny story. The other day I'm in the, what's the room where the radio is interviewing you in the
sound booth?
Sound booth, I guess. Okay. In the sound booth with the guy with Spokane Public Radio, and have this conversation, and I used Grange as a verb. And he's like, he caught it that quick. I mean, we had talked for 30 minutes and one word that I used in a different way just caught him that he wasn't expecting. He goes, I've never heard anybody use the word Grange other than as a proper noun. And I said, and that was a perfect segue into this entire conversation about Grange as a verb. And I absolutely think it is. If you read, actually it's not out yet, I think it's what I wrote for the Next Good Day magazine, but it's about asking our members and our leaders out there to use Grange as a verb, to test it out in your conversation and feel it roll off your, it sounds great. I mean, using it as a verb makes it powerful in some way, and it gives it more character. It gives it more oomph kind of behind it, and this reality that it's not just, I don't know, it's not just going to a meeting or something you read in a book. It's real and it's tangible, and it makes a difference. And how I Grange, how you Grange, how we Grange together is personal, and it's real, and it makes us go back and do it again, right? I mean, having that opportunity to, get that buzz off of those good deeds and hanging out with good people and seeing your labor turn into a benefit for your community or for a family that's down on their luck, whatever it is that you're doing at that moment in time, it's those thousands and thousands of little actions, right? I mean, not every time that we go out do we come up with rural broadband to the last mile or rural free delivery, right? Not every time is it this huge, gigantic issue and project. It's those literally thousands and thousands of things that all of our Granges collectively have done each and every month and each and every year for the last 156 years. That is this untold effect on our society. I mean, on how we live, on who we are and what we do, everything. It goes back to Grange. It's like the 7 degrees, or it's, what is it, how many degrees from what's his name?
8 degrees of separation, 7 degrees of separation.
Yeah, well,
6 degrees of separation. I don't know.
Something else, right? Yeah, there's this connection, and it's that using it as a verb, I think, that kind of changes your whole, kind of makes you a little bit. I mean, there's a huge pride thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's number one, but it also makes you a little, sassy in a good way, kind of. It's that fired up and let's go do something.
And I started doing that. I was thinking like, I'm a big word person. I mean, that comes kind of from the journalism background. And I always thought about the AP style book, and it defined out certain things because it wanted to make sure that you and I were using the same definition, the same framework, the same idea of what a term or a phrase meant. And I always think about the words deep South. I was teaching in the Deep South when I was, doing this, and I say, what's the Deep South? And you'd have people who were very much from there who would name states that are not part of that. And then I'd ask my friends, and I had a video of my friends from Pennsylvania saying what the Deep South was, and pretty much anything below Maryland was the Deep South for them. And I was like, okay, so if I say Deep South to different people,
Right.
like it means different things. And so that same idea, I think for me, was like volunteer. Some people volunteer, but they're more voluntold, right? Like they're doing because their school tells them they have to, right? Some people volunteer because they want to. Some people volunteer by picking up trash. Some people volunteer by collecting, signatures or money or fill in the blank. And Grange is all of those things, but it's also something so different because it has that fraternal and social and fellowship aspect and all of this stuff built in. And so I was thinking a lot about the fact that there was no word. It's not like when I can say I proceeded down the street versus I walked down the street versus I ran down the street versus I raced down the street. Like there's an urgency by the time you get to the I raced, and proceeded is just like a formality. I went. To say like why I Grange was so different because it is different. And so I think that's really cool that you're capturing that as well in the verbing sense of it.
Yeah, we'll keep highlighting that. But when I think of, and I'm looking for more comments.
6 degrees of 7.
Kevin Bacon, that's it.
There we
Thank you,
go.
Phil. That's who I was trying to come up with.
Oh.
That's the guy. But when you talk about membership matters, and I love this name for this group. To me, it's members matter, right? It's and so many times I think, and this is one of those goals that you're going to see me talk about over and over and over. I mean, number one is ensuring that the Grange is stronger tomorrow than we are today. If you hear me say anything, you'll hear me say that. That is absolutely what every single thing that we do is going to be measured to that. Does this program, does this project, does this event, does this letter that goes out, I mean, anything that we're doing, is it make us stronger tomorrow than we are today? The other piece with this is on, and I just totally lost my train of thought. Oh, is the members matter, is value. The other one is making sure that we are providing value to our members. So oftentimes we're so focused on what we're doing for everybody else, right? We've got to go do this in town, and we've got to do this at the cemetery, and we've got to put on this dinner for this family, and we've got to raise money for the FFA jackets, and we've got to do all these things for everybody else. And how many times have you done a program or something in the last measurable amount of time that's focused on your members? That is a benefit to your members for them belonging to your Grange.
I mean, that's part of what the definition, at least for the IRS, and if you really look it up, I mean, in a lot of ways, the definition of a fraternal organization is, it's kind of why we were organized as a fraternal organization, is that these people coming together needed a social outlet. They wanted to do good and learn, right, and grow as people, but they also needed that collective group of people to move something forward for them, for the farmers, for the this. I mean, that's where our legislative policy came from. That's where our advocacy came from.
But you can't just keep riding them like a rented pony
No.
and not give them some sugar cubes, right? You got to give them some sugar, and you got to give them some love, and you've got to give them that recognition and all of those things that we're just like, yeah, it's our folks. We don't need to worry about that. We've got to take care of our own folks, and in order to make this engine keep working. If they're not, well fed and well thanked and well loved and know how important they are to the team. I mean, we're all wearing the same jersey. We're all on the same team, and you've got to make sure that they know that, and that we're taking care of that, so that they're ready to take the ball when it's their turn to grab the ball and run. But you gotta keep them good.
I see that Rick put a question here, and I want to get to that in a minute. I'm hoping Rick might clarify a little bit just the context of his Grange, what they might be using volunteers for. And when he does that, we'll talk for just a minute about what I think is kind of a good next step. We have a theme every year, 2 years, we put out a theme for Grange month, but it's really for the year, the 2-year period is what we've been doing.
2 years.
In this case, yep, 2 years. And so, can you talk a little bit about what the theme is and kind of how you see that, not just how it developed and what the idea is, but how it can be used? And then I want to, yep, Phil's already got it in the chat. She can't even display it, talk about it without Phil jumping right in there.
But Phil's taking,
I love it. I love
care
it.
of me. He's making sure that if I'm
Get it
sitting here
right.
going, what the heck was it, that I can look and see.
Look, you have not been in this position long enough to have those senior moments yet. I'm so sorry. You got to get 2 or 3 terms in before we give you that
we'll
latitude.
spend 5 minutes in the basement, so I can't claim black mold disease or something. So the theme, as you see it in the chat this year, is Grange Strong. And of course, in our society over the last many years now, you've seen that phrase from organizations or communities that have had something to rally behind, right? It's a rallying phrase when to get everybody, look, nothing is going to beat us. And that was the piece with that Grange Strong piece was, you will, if you don't know me that well yet, you'll soon find out that if we can carve it around teams, if we can make it fit in something that's competitive,
Yeah, that's it.
That's what we're going to be striving for. And I mean, over and over and over, the emphasis on that we are in this together. If we are Grange members, we are on the same team. It doesn't matter which Grange we belong to. It doesn't matter how long we've been a member. If you are a Grange member, you're a Granger, and we are on the same team. And the energy has got to be on what those teams can accomplish, not on somebody that wants to go rogue and not be a part of the team.
Or row against it.
You can't row. Yeah, you just can't row against. I mean, you can try, and it just gets everybody all in a kerfuddle, and it just doesn't work very well. And I just don't have patience for folks that don't want to be on the team. So the focus of Grange Strong is to elicit that feeling of camaraderie and strength, united strength and teamwork. The 3 words that go across the banner there: rooted. That's where the tree comes from, obviously, but the rooted means that we're not going anywhere. We're strong right here where we're at. I know Phil has a bunch of things that he put out that are different things that can be focused on by a local Grange, but rooted and then resilient.
Love that word.
You cannot be 156 years old and coming off 2 years of membership growth, right?
Good job, guys. Good
if
job.
you are not resilient.
Right.
So it is rooted, resilient, and then united. And that united piece wraps back around to the Grange strong, that we are going to support each other. We're going to be here for each other. And, you know, I'd like to see, and maybe this is the forum, is like some sister Grange relationships or something where, you know, a Grange in Connecticut and a Grange in Oregon, since those are two states that are on here, can say, hey, you know, we're both in a suburban type of a neighborhood. We're both about 60 members in size. We both have our own halls. Got a lot of things that we could probably talk about
Mhm.
that match up, you know, and communicate. You could do share programs by Zoom. You could share meetings by Zoom. You could talk through things that have worked well, things that you're frustrated with. I mean, you could talk a lot of things with this platform, and I think have heck of a lot of fun with it. I mean, that would be the cool part, is how can these, you know, you see the sister city signs, and that's why I said the sister Granges, but you could see all the different directions that something like that could go.
So Rick Crook had mentioned that they have officers in their Grange that feel like the volunteers are more important than their current members. Which obviously we hope that those volunteers will one day fall in love with the Grange or have time in their lives or feel like it's the right fit to become Grange members. But until then, they're just volunteers. So Rick, do you want to tell us a little bit about your Grange, like how you're using volunteers, so Chris can give her thoughts?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, great. So hi, Chris. My first time to meet you. So we have a Grange here in Southern Oregon, and our main revenue flow is our monthly breakfast. And we have members and non-members who work as volunteers for the breakfast. And a couple of the officers in our Grange, when I'm trying to have one of our activities this year, one of our priorities be a membership drive. And they are saying that, you know, we think it's more important to have volunteers who will actually work than members who we get in that never volunteer, never work, and then they leave it there. And I'm suspecting that they just don't want to do the work that's required to convince people of the value of becoming a member of the Grange. And I'm trying to figure out how to turn that around so that I don't, as master, have to be also the only person trying to gather new members. And we have a very small membership.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't run into that in my personal community Grange experience, where the members are not all in on every, you know, every event. In fact, some of the things I've seen is, I know at 5 Mile Prairie, we've made a point that we pick 4 or 5 major events a year that we know we can do well, that aren't going to burn us out, because we are our labor force. And there are times when we might get a couple of Boy Scouts that are, you know, looking for a merit badge, or, you know, somebody comes in and to help us out. But for the most part, it's our members that are carrying the water. They're the ones that are there at every event from start to finish, and doing that sort of thing. I know that there are some Granges. I mean, I know some Granges that do a lot more calendar, you know, events on the calendar, and their folks get burned out. And then, you know, there's a little bit of frustration that goes with that, you know, I mean, you can't do it every day, right? You gotta respect people's time. I mean, I really don't know how to respond any differently than that, other than, you know, the volunteers that are coming I guess I'd be interested to know why they haven't joined. I mean, what's the separation between the members that aren't working that you really want to get working and the volunteers that are working that don't want to be members? I'm not sure why we can't get that crossed over and have both doing both.
Yeah, I am not either. And that's a very good question. I asked one of our really good volunteers at our monthly breakfast, and she said, "No, I'm just happy helping out. I don't want to be involved with meetings and stuff." And she said she didn't want to become a member, and then she walked off to her car. So I couldn't follow up the question with her. Some of the members, we have a monthly. It's always the second Sunday, and a lot of them don't take the responsibility of saying that I reserve this weekend and I'm going to be there. We have to call and beg and pull for people to come, and I'm going to be out of town. I have something else to do. Oh yeah, I can come. So it's a struggle to actually get enough people to work it, even from our members. And our key members that actually do stuff are less than 10 people, even though we have 30 members. So I'm frustrated. I'm not quite sure how to work it, and so this is probably not the right forum to to do a troubleshooting on our Grange.
Rick, I would love to follow up a little bit, like personally, but let me ask you two quick questions. We're gonna see if the boss approves of my job for a second. Sorry. So I guess question number one is, are you doing the breakfast because you need the money in order to sustain the hall? Like,
That's correct. That's
okay,
correct.
so without those breakfasts, you really are in a bind, basically. So
That's
you
correct.
kind of have to do
Right.
them. Have to do
Yes.
them. All right. So until you find a different potential revenue source, this is the pull teeth and get people there strategy. Okay.
Sure.
The second question, I guess, is have you guys made sure to have some things around your hall that people are interacting with when they're coming, whether they're members or volunteers, that show them Grange beyond the breakfast, that show them some of that insight into the fraternalism, the fun, the opportunities that they could have that are even in just your community, let alone if they've got opportunities for camps or, different things like that, scholarships, whatever. But where there is fun for that Grange. I mean, that I would want to pay. I know in Oregon, we're talking probably $60 or so a year in order to get something out of it more than just the good feeling of having volunteered.
That's a good question. My background is not in sales, so
No,
I
okay.
don't.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I don't do that for a while. We have one poster board that shows a bunch of stuff that we've done for raising money and stuff, but we don't have anything that really shows necessarily fun, which is a good point that you're making. And so I guess I need some help with that.
So I see Susie, and I think that's JC, like from DeMalt, well, not DeMalt anymore, sorry, Junkman. I see two people from Oregon, and one of which obviously works in your state office and does some publicity stuff. I also see the Western Region shipmate. Sorry, Scott, you're getting thrown under the bus here. And so maybe we can set up a time to kind of talk amongst ourselves. But if your Grange hasn't done anything where somebody's coming in, man, that was so much fun last night when we went out to that movie or that concert, or, oh my God, you remember last year when we did the whitewater rafting? That was great. We should do that again. If your members aren't having those conversations in front of these people, it may be very hard to sell to them to do more because all they see is doing work. They're happy in this work setting, but they don't know what else that would entail, but it's probably work because they're not hearing about fun. So maybe we can sit down and think about, even if it's a game night or, you're going to one of the other members' grandkids plays or something as a group or whatever, something that would resonate with your already current members so they would enjoy it and probably go. Then they can bring that story back without it being, rehearsed or overblown. And maybe that catches the attention. The one thing I will always say, and good, bad, or indifferent, is you weren't a cute girl in high school. I was friends with a lot of them. I watched a lot of boys ask the girls out way too many times. And by about the second or third time of them saying no, they wanted to avoid that boy like the plague in the hallway, even though he was harmless. But I've told you no 2 or 3 times, dude, get the hint. And so the one thing I think I always worry about is if we ask too much. So if you've asked once or twice, back off, let them hear some of those good stories, let them enjoy the time with your members. Talk a little bit about what you guys might be discussing at that next meeting. We're going to be voting on this. Do you guys need any background on this resolution we're going to be voting on? We're thinking about doing this, and let them see what they could be a part of and could have influence in if they were members. And then hopefully they're saying, oh, what is that about? And that's where you're in as the next time. Because you know, the time the kid came back from a summer vacation and he got all cute and the girl was like, so what are you doing this weekend? That was the in, right? And so astute people would figure out that's the time to ask her again. And I think it's like high school dating. Like it's if you're good at dating in high school, you might be good at this.
Yeah, and you can try some of those events that don't happen at the Grange Hall either. You know, you could go to the local AAA baseball game as a group. You could get your bicycles and hit the trail path for a while and then have a picnic. And you know, I'm thinking of some things that we've done at our Grange that they don't happen at the hall, but it's getting folks out, whether they're members or prospective members, to do something fun together and just hang out and you know, go take a hike or go find a waterfall that somebody read about that's in the area that you haven't seen yet, or something, to just see each other on a different you know, in a different light as well.
You know, I'm gonna tell a story about something that Chris came to me a couple years ago with to design a poster for her Grange, and this has stuck with me ever since. So glad it's you sitting here because I was going to use this anyway. It can happen sometimes in the hall too. They were having an event that they called Blood and Guts. It was a blood donation event, so it makes sense, blood. But what are the guts? No, they didn't like rip apart anything or whatever. The guts were they did karaoke in the hall. So you could come in, you could give blood, and you could go up and you could sing, which of course takes some guts. And I loved the concept because it was probably, I don't know, a couple of weeks before that several of us were out at an event, a president's conference, actually, I guess it was. And there was karaoke going on in this facility. And I was like, I don't care. I don't have to be drunk to make a complete idiot of myself. Let's go. And I mean, there were people who took videos of that. And that was like the fun joke for ages when we went places. They're like, oh my God, let me show you this video of Amanda. And I was thinking to myself, man, her people are going to get her on video and somebody's going to show me a video of her singing like Journey or something. And I just have to have that. I never got that video. I'm very disappointed, but you can have any of these fun things as long as you're finding ways, I think, for your people to enjoy each other's company a little bit and then share how fun that was. You know, I think that'd be cool. Anyway,
Great.
That's my best advice. That's our best advice for right now. But
I think a follow-up would be good.
Yeah.
I think that would be.
All right, Scott, you're in charge of connecting with Rick.
Okay.
All right, so I see that we have a couple other things. We have to make several deposits from people before we can make withdrawal. That was a good comment, Scott. I also saw that you asked earlier, at what point do we start pruning to strengthen our future? And so I'm going to let you take that one because you probably know a lot of my response to that.
Yeah, but the pruning one, that's almost a last resort one, you know? I mean, I want to keep it positive. And when we talk about pruning, at least the way that I'm thinking of it, it's, you know, it's suggesting that if you have some problem folks or folks that really aren't playing team ball, that you suggest something else for them to go and do, right? That the Grange you know, and we've talked about that in a lot of different forums, is the Grange isn't necessarily the right fit for everybody. I mean, it can't be. Nothing is the right fit
Yeah.
for absolutely everyone. And every once in a while, there's somebody that comes in that really just doesn't Grange. They don't Grange. And you've got to have that heart, that servant's heart, and that mentality, that friend I mean, there's all those components that go together. And the pruning part is, I mean, that's the tough stuff. I mean, that's where I don't know if you can have that discussion with 10 states and 20 people, because it's so personal.
Yeah.
It's such a specific thing that's going on in a specific Grange, or because of a specific event that happened, that you, I mean, we could talk about it in generalities, but really when it comes to that point in time, you got to be specific and intentional with that action.
I think I definitely know, like, we talk a lot about members and membership, and that's what forum we're on. But I'm also thinking that this could also reference how many activities a Grange might be taking on, how far we might be stretching the definition of what we are, what we do. I really, really shudder when I hear Granges say, "Oh, we can do anything you want to do. You know, Grange can be anything that you want it to be." And there's like a hair of truth in that soup, but
Small.
it kind of ruins the soup for me. Because I feel like once you've said that, you've failed to give yourself an identity, and you've given up some of those things that are crucial to who we are.
And they probably don't have a mission statement.
Don't have a vision statement on their wall.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I
Yeah.
think, so I guess when I was hearing that pruning, I was also hearing, sometimes you have to decide who you really need to be in that moment for that community. And maybe that community doesn't need, you know, a blood and guts. Maybe everybody's, you know, doing blood drives. But maybe they do. You kind of have to figure out if
Right.
it's worth that effort, if it's making sense for your community. And just because you've done it, and this is where I'm very,
I know what you're gonna say.
this is where I'm very casually trying to go into our next topic, which is, just because you've done it for 100 years, 156 years even, may mean you don't have to do it that way anymore. And I kind of wanted your feedback, or you to talk about your philosophy on the way we've always done it.
Yeah, I mean, there's
John's already laughing, by the way.
there's a time and a place, I think, for consistency, right?
Mhm.
For pancakes with Santa at 5 Mile Prairie Grange. If you've come by there on the first Saturday over the last, what, 12, 15 years, you will have found pancakes with Santa on the first Saturday from 8 to 11. And, you know, you can say it's because we've always done it. No, it's not because we've always done it, but we have found something. We have found the niche. We have found the time, and we're good at it.
Mhm.
And it's one of the things that our members absolutely have fallen in love with, and they love the event, and I mean, everybody's there. If you saw the pictures that we posted from the other morning, I mean, there's a kitchen crew where there's more people in the kitchen than practically fit in the kitchen, and more people upstairs helping than, and you never turn anybody away. You never say, you know, we don't need 5 ladies behind that table, one would work. It's like, oh no, if all 5 want to be there, because what are they doing? They are having the time of their lives. I mean, they are hooting and having a great time and interacting, and one of them will get up and wander around and come back, and they're just chit-chatting the whole day, and all of a sudden 3 hours is done, and oh my gosh, it's time to clean up. It's not a burden, you know, for anybody. But getting back to the event thing, or there's that line, and there's that concept between, this is who we are, you know, if you want to transition from an event to Grange as
I do,
an
yeah.
organization, right? So, I mean, this is who we are. This is what we do. And that foundation is absolutely critical for holding us up. What I've been talking about more and more is here we are. Here is this square, right? This square peg of 157 years or 56 years of service, of fraternal relationships, of lessons and teachings and who we are and the way that grandpa did it and the way that great grandpa did it and all of these things and this tremendous pride in all of that, right? I mean, this website or this Facebook group, I'll get it right third time, that Jean started with the history stuff is absolutely fascinating. I mean, and it's that stuff that we've heard about, but now all of a sudden here's a picture of one. We see it, and it's part of really of who we are as an organization. Go down in the basement today here at the National Grange, and it's like, oh my gosh.
I had to drag her out.
Yeah.
We almost didn't make it. We really almost did.
She did drag me out. But that's who we are.
Mhm.
But then we realize, guess what, guys? It's 2024 and we're in a society that's round. We are no longer in this square society of 1867, of 1920, of 1966, of 1981. It's 2024. Guess what? We are a quarter of the way through a new century.
Yeah.
Right? Who's thought about it in that term lately? But you got to take this and you've got this. And so how do we get this square thing into this round thing, right? And that is the challenge and the beauty of what we're doing, because I think a lot of it is you don't try to make this fit in here. You know what you do? You do this. You put it right underneath and it's the foundation, right? So all of this is the foundation for this, for where we're at today. You don't get here without having this. And you may find that your group wants to know all about this. They want to know that 156 years. They want to hear every lesson. They want to see every degree. They want to do everything. They want to know. And you hear that there are groups out there doing that. You hear groups that they just want to know that this is here. They want to get the basics and then they're off and running and they want to do this stuff. And then we've got this wonderful heirloom program that fits somewhere in between, right? So we can do both. We can take this in these bite-sized chunks and give it to the folks today that are in palatable, and I don't mean palatable about like it or not like it, but in manageable, maybe is the better word, manageable pieces. And then it asks the next question, right? You all of a sudden go from, you just give them enough to where they want the next piece and the next piece. And pretty soon you've bridged that gap. But the expectation is not that every single Grange Hall or Grange meeting that you walk into is going to be doing it exactly the same. And I don't think we've ever seen that. I don't think, it's fun. You walk around and what do you do? The first thing I do is always look in a lectures station or pull open a secretary's desk drawer and see how many years worth of manuals are in there, right? And some Granges are operating with 1936 and some Granges are operating with 1990 or 2013 is the paper one. That's the one that I like, but it really is all the same, right? I mean, it's the same stuff but the way that we interpret it across the country and in our own separate Grange halls is just a little bit different. And I think that's the beauty of it. You put your own spin on it. It's like, there's 47 ways you can wear a square scarf, right? I mean, it's still a square scarf, but how it looks on you and how it looks on me is different because we wear it just a little bit different. So
I like the fact that you couldn't even stomach saying the words the way we've always done it. Like, I think that's funny. It's because that's the one thing I think we're learning, staff wise. You guys are going to learn a lot. Is that the way we've always done it could be the way that's working, but probably there's something that can be updated, something that can be changed, something that can be looked at least.
There's this piece of, and I don't know how many of you guys think about this, or if I'm just the only, geek in the room, but if you see me at national convention, you know that one of my most prized possessions is my grandfather's convention pin from the 1929 National Convention in Seattle, Washington. And I was able to, to have, or am able to have that pin of his. And there's oftentimes, so in 1929, that's 5 years from now,
100 years,
knowing that yeah, it'll be 100 years, but that he saw the 7th degree in 1929, because I've checked the book in the basement, and there he is on the list for 1929. There's something pretty cool that your grandfather, who you've never met because he died when Dad was 14, did some of the same things and learned some of the same parts and in the same Grange hall that I grew up in, right? I mean, there's some just this connection to that's cool. But you also know that's not the future of the Grange. You've got to go get these new members and train them to be able to take the keys to the car that don't have those stories, and that it's important to you, but it's not important to them. It's more important that you get them enrolled in what what the Grange is and moving forward. So it's this cool combination of both. I think that's, I don't know, sometimes tricky, but on the other hand, just a really neat. I mean, you don't see that anywhere else. Nowhere else.
I want to take a minute. I want to acknowledge the fact that John Benedict has finally gotten home from whatever Grange meeting he has been at. He has 36 or 7 Granges in the state, and I'm pretty sure that every night of the month and 3 times on Sunday he's at Grange meetings, because that's where I always catch him, is going to and from. John is, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this, our new vice president. So not a bad combination. Plus East West, this is kind of fun.
We've had some fun already.
Yeah, I bet. So hi John.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
So I'm gonna make you do one of these days. You got off the hook a little bit tonight because you were traveling. But I was hoping that you might kind of give a little bit of philosophy of where you are in this I think movement towards, I don't want to say change, but towards just reimagining where Grange goes and how that's kind of played out in your state. And then I know we're getting a little late, but I think that this is kind of important to see what these folks are thinking, in order for you to take some excitement back to your Granges. So, John.
So the one thing that I've tried to do in my time as state president is what you said at the beginning: think outside of the box. I'm not the biggest fan of cliches, but I've been using that one now for probably 8 or 10 years. And it's just challenging our Granges to try something different. Not everything is going to work. It's just, I missed something there.
We muted ourselves because the cleaning lady is starting. Apparently we're here too late in the National Grange building. So we just didn't want you to hear the vacuum cleaner. But go ahead, sorry.
Send her to my house when she gets done down there. She could have a good time up here. no, I was saying it's just, we're trying to find new ways to attract interest in the Grange. And that's what I think. There's nothing wrong with the way we've always done it, but we need to look outside of the way we've always done it and try something different. Maybe it's taking a 100-year tradition of a fair, but putting a new spin on it, maybe putting some type of interactive display to capture the younger folks that are more interested in visual things than us old people that like paper for everything. And it's just really in New Jersey, we've had success with bringing in new members and just trying different things. And not everything's going to work. There are going to be some things that we look at it and we go, why did I try that? That was a flop. But there's nothing wrong with that because every experience you have teaches you and helps make the next one better. So I'm excited about the wave that we're on now with membership growth and involvement in community granges and the whole push to revitalize the pomonas that I think we're going to really start working on again after the first of the year, and just get involved and encourage the the conversation was interesting with Rick's conundrum with the members that are happy to volunteer with his Grange but not necessarily want to join. It's just finding a way to encourage them to join and to show what the Grange can do for them as well as what they can do for the Grange.
I know we're getting a little late. I want to allow if anybody has anything that they would like to hear or see,
Hear from them.
or if you guys want to jump in. I do want to say two things before we get to that point, because Phil's gonna hit me if I don't. Number one, we are doing for a second year a Don't Drop the Ball New Year's Eve party. It is from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on our Facebook, YouTube, and other social media channels. Phil's putting the information there in the bottom. It's actually sponsored by Grange Foundation or hosted for Grange Foundation, because if you all are not aware, we're coming to the end of the year and you may or may not have a few extra dollars laying around that you would like to make tax deductible. And Grange Foundation, which this worthy person right next to me is also now the president of, because she gets to be president of three things automatically by her vote, by being elected. We're gonna be hosting that, so I hope you'll tune in. Phil's put the information in there, and that is 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. So for those of you who are on the West Coast, it's gonna be really early. Sorry, but we'll have a good time with that. The second thing is this is the last one of these we're doing on the second Tuesday, at least for now. I kind of promised that we would move these around a little bit, just because I know that the second Tuesday for some people is their Grange meeting all the time. They've always missed it, or it just doesn't work out for some other reason for them. So starting in January, you will see us on the third Wednesday, same time, same bad station, same crazy host, but you will see us move to Wednesday nights, third Wednesday. Also, we're adding a new thing. And it is Fellowship First Fridays, so Triple F. And that is going to include a little bit of a program, and then some type of game or activity, and then breakout rooms for you guys with a prompt. And you can go to the room that kind of makes sense, where you can have a conversation about something that you're interested in having a conversation about. We are starting that, I think it's like the January the 3rd. It will be a Zoom, sorry, January the 5th. That's the first Friday. It will be on Zoom like it is here. We will get you the link out. The one thing with those is if we grow beyond 200 people, then we're going to have to figure something else out. So help me do that. Let's bust the system. Let's break the internet a little bit, as they've said. So at this point, we'd like to hear from you guys. I'm not going to go around the room per se, but if you already know Chris or John, you may want to hold back and see if any of the ones who don't know her or him yet want to speak before you guys do, and then we'll wrap up for the night. So does anybody have any questions or comments for our worthy president or our worthy vice president, who for me is down that way?
If we're even at the top on there.
I don't know where we are. We're here.
She said third Wednesdays.
Third Wednesdays.
Third Wednesdays, first Fridays. Come on.
It depends on if my new boss allows me to have it on that night.
Oh yeah, good point. Hey, new boss, question for you.
Well, since I didn't even know about the ball catching thing on the,
That's that. Good.
We have a lot to fill champ in on.
We'll chat. We'll chat tomorrow in the
Okay.
office.
well, we got a hike here in a little bit.
There we
so-
go. All
We
right.
do, it's a long hike.
So let's turn this over to you guys. Any comments, any questions, any concerns? I can't believe it. This group is way too quiet. It's not possible.
I just want to say how refreshing it is to hear from the new leadership. And, I think you're right on. When you came to Connecticut and you walked around the hotel room there and shared with us kind of your vision. And I just thought that it was inspiring. And I don't know our new vice president, but I'm sure we'll get to know John better also. And it's nice to see somebody still wears a tie in this world. I'm wearing one tomorrow. I'm hosting a lunch for 70 people and they're making me wear a tie. So I've been retired 7 years, so I haven't worn ties much.
Dave, if you ever see me in a tie, run. My students used to know if I showed up in a tie, some class was in real trouble that day. So if you ever see me in a tie, run.
I went from work this afternoon to a holiday gathering for one of my Granges and then didn't bother to stop and take I've lost the shoes, but I didn't bother to lose my holiday tie I had on.
Please don't
today.
lose any more yet.
What's that?
So please don't lose any more
No.
yet.
No, trust me. No.
Is that one of the musical ones where you pinch it and it plays a tune?
No, I only have one of those and I don't wear it because I usually get it caught in I'm a bank manager by my professional career, and I usually manage to get it caught in the drawer at least once a day, and it just drives me crazy listening to it for a minute and 3 seconds.
Feels like a skit we need to have. Like, I really feel like this needs to be like an SNL skit that we need to.
We
All right,
could.
man. All right.
We could.
Well, having you two that close together, I think, is trouble. I noticed that right from the beginning.
But we
And I'm just a block down the street, John. So
classed it up with the flag, so.
Very nice.
Yeah,
See, we've got both of them right there.
yep.
So we're
We
good.
tried to, we're the only two left in the building out because the vacuum cleaner finally shut off.
That's true. So
but-
I guess I'm your bodyguard tonight. Actually, I'm pretty sure you're probably mine, but whatever, it's okay.
But no, these are, you guys, these are super important. The opportunity to look at each other and look at fellow Grange leaders from across the country. And I'm not talking about John and I or the staff a bit, but all of you that Grange, every single day in your community Granges. What we do when we're not wearing a national title is we Grange at our local Grange. I'm a local Grange secretary. Dwayne's
Me too.
the rental guy, right? So we're living this stuff and we're doing this stuff, and we want to talk about how we make this work. And what you're going to start to see is the opportunities come up for all of you to get involved in what I'm calling work groups. And this is since you're the ones that are on tonight, this is a tiny little peek under the tent about what's going to be rolling out here. And a ton of work groups on everything from, how we do our communications to how we work with Granges. One of my absolute goals is I want every state Grange to be at the table with 2 voting delegates. And we will make that happen. And so it's how do we get from where we're at to there, right? And all of these things, these work groups are looking at what we're doing today, what is best practices perhaps, what is, what are new members looking for, what is relevant in today's society, how do we get from where we're at to where we want to be? And the question that we have to ask that we don't ask all the time is, what does that end state look like? Right? where do we want to be? What is success look like, and how do we reach it? So that's what these work groups are going to be. So you'll see through the PCs that come out on Fridays, you'll start to see those asks for people to volunteer to be on these work groups and start working through some of these issues, where there'll be a group like what's on here assigned to reporting out. It's not a delegate body report, it's reporting out to me, really, and I guess the executive committee on some of them. But what makes sense, and how do we make this work? Because it's not my decision, or maybe not decision, but it's not just one person that's going to come up with it, and it's not just two people that are going to come up with it, and it's probably not just one night that 10 people are going to come up with it. But we're going to keep talking about it, and we're going to keep looking at each other, and we're going to find the answers that we need to get the Grange where we need it to be. And that is, I am 100% convinced that if we could channel the 7 founders,
8.
all right, the 8 founders, wherever 7 is, we're taught 7 over and over.
No,
right?
I know, but
I know,
Carolyn,
Carolyn, she did her part. That they would want us to do whatever it takes to ensure that this organization continues, right? They did not create this to have us think that we've come up against the wall and we're throwing in the towel. They created this to be dynamic and diverse, and to be able to be relevant, resilient and relevant. And so that's what we're going to be doing, is we're going to be looking for those answers. So as you're seeing that, reach out, say, hey, I want to help, or send me an email or a text and say, this is something that I wish that we could fix, and I want to be a part of it, and we'll get her happening. There is nothing that's not on the table. Everything is up for discussion.
If nobody else has a question, I got one.
Uh-oh. Scott's up.
Well, I was just curious, as far as going forward with stuff and whatnot, do you see any chance that we're going to change how we do elections, or look for the future leaders of our organization, or how we accept people that are interested in becoming that? I know there's so many unwritten rules that I've done wrong, even in our own state, that I've had people jump on me about, and I know that I've heard other new members, don't like it when somebody corrects them on, you're carrying the stick wrong, is one of Amanda's favorite things. But same thing. I've already been a state officer, and since I said I was done at that point in time of being a state officer, you're supposedly taken out of the running of ever doing anything again. Or if you say you're interested and say, I go, hey, you know what? I want to be the next state master. And then obviously, oh, well, you can't campaign. So this is all thrown under the bus. At what point do we need to update our thinking, or do you think we ever will, on how we do this, or whatnot?
I think things are constantly evolving. I think you could point to a lot of things where there's been movement in some of those things. National Grange, which is probably the slowest to react to change, right, is has recently changed the election process. The entire election process is different just within the last couple of years. So I think we see that. I think that happens based on, and I think it starts at the local and the state levels, and what people get familiar with and used to there. They bring those ideas, to the national level. But I think, and it depends on the state. That's the other thing. The more that you travel and talk to folks from other states, and you understand the some of the size differences and the numbers games, states, a state like Scott, like you and I grew up in, and that those numbers are very different from other states
And state.
and like Ann State, where it's not, everybody's going to get a turn in Ann State, whether they wanted it or not, maybe sometimes, versus others that you feel like you've got to put your time in, right? I mean, that's how we came up with, look, kiddo, you don't have enough years or trips around the sun or whatever yet, and it's just different, everywhere you go. So it's kind of hard to peg, but I think you see that movement, and I think that's going to continue to happen. I think it has to. Nothing stays the same.
Well, I just that concerns me because it seems like sometimes we're going with whoever has had enough turns around the sun instead of whoever may be the best for that particular time for that job, and that concerns me that we're not looking for who is potentially the best for what we need for the organization, more of who's already put in their time. And I would like to see us not get stuck in that rut.
No, that's absolutely. I think one of the things that you always want to do, right, is strive to be the best, find the best. And that's that kind of falls into this best practices, this search for best practices. Is maybe we need one on the election process or some other, maybe that's too fine of a subject, but some other group to look at what some options are to ensure that we've got those folks that are best prepared for those positions that have a chance to be in them.
I
Thank
think
you.
some of it, if I can jump in for a second, I think some of it too is those of us that are in state leadership positions to recognize that we have folks that are interested and work on developing and helping them get the skills they need to become the future leaders. That something that stuck with me the first year I was a delegate with Pete when he first went in as state president. We went to Ohio, and I was the second delegate, and we're sitting at the Assembly of Demeter meeting, and John Valentine, it was election year, and Mr. Valentine stood up and gave this long speech, and the end of his speech was, "The man does not seek the office seeks the man." And that has stuck with me for the last 14, 16, 18 years, whatever it's been. And I got hit by that truck a month ago, or that bus or that train or whatever you want to call it. So I think it's really important that we recognize folks that we see might have the potential, and maybe we should reach out to them and say, hey, what do you see? Where do you see your Grange career going? And put it back on them as a question. And that's maybe the best way to try and find some of our future leaders.
I love the mentoring concept. I mean, we have to be doing it. We have to be doing it in every bit of our lives. I mean, that's Phil and I just talked about, part of our programs that we do, fellows and shipmates, we're mentoring people that maybe sit in our paid seats one day. If they don't, they sit as volunteers who could help the people who sit in our paid seats. We need transition documents. We need to be preparing people. It's just, no matter what you're doing in life, that's important. Haley.
Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. So I come from a political background, most recently anyway, political background. And we're always talking about putting people in the pipeline for higher office. So there is a lot of grooming involved in getting people recognized, especially when you can't campaign, that you're going to have to work your way up the pipeline in order for enough people to get to know you to have the confidence to put you in a leadership position. So I agree with Scott that we can easily miss the mark on qualified leadership and relevant leadership when we look to people who have just put in their time. But I think that we also have to create the base of knowledge and knowledge of the potential candidates for higher office by mentoring them and putting them into the right places at the right time. There's a balance there. Did
And
that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, and I would, make sure too that if you've got folks in your Granges that have those ambitions or that you see that have, that passion and that drive that may get them there, to encourage them that you don't have to have a specific title to be able to, to get involved and to I don't know, ascend to that place where people are looking at you. Don't get wrapped up that you're not a current state officer or you haven't done. If you're involved in different committees or work groups, or if they need, somebody at national convention to assist the committees in doing research, and that's what you're good at, those are the kind of behind the scenes stuff that gets you that experience and connections and those things that all add into that as well. I mean, there's I don't know, I see a lot of people spend a lot of effort to try to, have a certain color sash or a certain sash, and it actually sometimes is limiting. You can do more when you're kind of the free agent and you can do whatever you want to do rather than what you have to do when you're wearing that sash. Rather than being stuck in that chair all session, you can be roaming around doing a lot of stuff and anyway.
So I think we're gonna cut it for the night because it's almost 10 here. And we have a death march to go on. If you have not been on a Chris Hamp death march, they are famous. So I've been told. So we're gonna try one. No, I think I've been.
Make sure your Fitbit's charged up.
Ask Jared Crowder. Yeah, absolutely. On a personal note, I've heard from several of you as the last couple of weeks have unfolded after my dad passed away, and I really appreciate that so much, that I do have a Grange family that I can look at for comfort and assistance and fellowship and friendship. So thank you. We have that chapter behind me now, and I never want to have feelings about it again. So if you have a card in the mail, that's good enough. We're done. Other than that, I think we're good for the night.
Yeah, this was good. They actually stayed with us and gave us chats, but if you, this Zoom thing is available. Yeah. And if you've got a group of friends that, you don't have access to an account, let one of these states know. I know John's got an account. I know Illinois' got one they'd share. I know Oregon's got one.
Connecticut.
Washington's got one. Connecticut's got one. Let's, say, hey, let's get a group together and start talking about something. And that's where I think the magic's going to happen. The more we talk, the more folks that are thinking about it, talking about it, the magic's going to happen.
Absolutely. Yep. And in the chat, thank you, Phil. champ@nationalgrange.org. It's a real easy one to remember. champ@nationalgrange.org. If you're interested, you all are kind of on the front lines because you're here. So feel free to reach out to Chris, suggest a working group, suggest one that you might be interested in being on. Tell her what your expertise is. She will put you to work. She will not be shy. So.
Yep, there's lots to do.
All right. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.